Here we go again. Here we are. It's winter again. Didn't seem to take long to come back. We're having to sit outside with hats and coats and everything.
Yeah, I got a new hat.
Everything there. You look like the new kid on the block.
The old new kid.
I still got.
That's what I am.
I still got my old jacket and my old hat. All right. So we're reading from
Canto 3, Chapter 15, Text 33.
Chapters entitled
Description of the Kingdom of God.
We've been in the Kingdom of God for a while, but it's interesting. This chapter is called Description of the Kingdom of God, but it's actually describing the
activity,
the Leela, very nicely. Okay, say the invocation. And by the way, we're just in Covent Garden, and we're at St. Paul's Church, not St. Paul Cathedral, but it's a parish church of Covent Garden. Anyway, if you ever go to Covent Garden, I think it's kind of like the only church around there.
Quite nice.
Yeah, it is very nice. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Okay, text 33. In the Vaikuntha world, there is complete harmony between the residents and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, just as there is complete harmony within space between the big and the small skies. Why then is there a seed of fear in this field of harmony? These two persons are dressed like inhabitants of Vaikuntha, but wherefrom can their disharmony come into existence? First paragraph. Just as there are different departments in each state in this material world, the civil department and the criminal department, so in God's creation there are two departments of existence. As in the material world, we find that the criminal department is far, far smaller than the civil department, so this material world, which is considered the criminal department, is 1/4 of the entire creation of the Lord. All living entities who are residents of the material universes are considered to be more or less criminals because they do not wish to abide by the order of the Lord, or they are against the harmonious activities of God's will. The principle of creation is that the Supreme Lord, the Personality of Godhead, is by nature joyful, and he becomes many in order to enhance his transcendental joy. The living entities, like ourselves, being part and parcel of the Supreme Lord, are meant to satisfy the senses of the Lord. Thus, whenever there is a discrepancy in that harmony, immediately the living entity is entrapped by Maya or illusion.
Yes, any thoughts?
Yeah, at the end it says the living entities are meant to satisfy the senses of the Lord. So when we don't do that, when there's a discrepancy in that harmony, then Prabhupada says immediately the living entity is entrapped by Maya. So you're either serving the Lord or you're serving Maya.
Yeah, you're either trying to bring pleasure to the Lord and his senses, Rishikena or Rishikesha, or trying to please our own senses. Which is difficult, let's be honest. I mean, you just try to eat whatever it is that Krishna might like all the time, whatever that is. Milk sweets. He eats a lot of milk sweets all the time. Or, Yeah, so somehow there has to be some balance also of our own sense gratification. I was just reading a purport earlier, actually, and Prabhupada was saying, not too much and not too little, But still, we try to make sure it's pleases Krishna, I guess, if we try to...
Okay. This jacket attracts bumblebees.
It's because you are like a flower.
Right.
Okay, we'll keep reading. The external energy of the Lord is called the material world, and the kingdom of the internal energy of the Lord is called Vaikuntha, or the kingdom of God. In the Vaikuntha world, there is no disharmony between the Lord and the residents. Therefore, God's creation in the Vaikuntha world is perfect. There is no cause of fear. The entire kingdom of God is such a completely harmonious unit that there is no possibility of enmity. Everything there is absolute. Just as there are many physiological constructions within the body, yet they work in one order for the satisfaction of the stomach. And just as in a machine, there are hundreds and thousands of parts, yet they run in harmony to fulfill the function of the machine. In the Vaikuntha planets, the Lord is perfect, and the inhabitants also perfectly engage in the service of the Lord. Feels good to say that, in the service of the Lord, when you're sitting outside of a church.
Okay. The Mayavadi philosophers impersonalists interpret this verse of Srimad Bhagavatam to mean that the small sky and the big sky are one, but this idea cannot stand. The example of the big sky and the small sky is also applicable within a person's body. The big sky is the body itself, and the intestines and other parts of the body occupy the small sky. Each and every part of the body has individuality, even though occupying a small part of the total body. Similarly, the whole creation is the body of the Supreme Lord, and we created beings, or anything that is created, are but a small part of that body. The parts of the body are never equal to the whole. This is never possible. In Bhagavad Gita, it is said that the living entities, who are parts and parcels of the Supreme Lord, are eternally parts and parcels. According to the Mayavadi philosophers, the living entity in illusion considers himself part and parcel, although he is actually one and the same as the Supreme Whole. This theory is not valid. The oneness of the whole and the part is in their quality. The qualitative oneness of the small and large portions of the sky does not imply that the small sky becomes the big sky.
Thoughts?
No.
I think the essence of that is that, they don't merge into each other, because the verse mentioned, it's the previous verse, I think, mentioned something about becoming one, not becoming one. But Prabhupada again stressing on the point that, he says the Mayavads interpret this verse to mean, just as there is complete harmony within space between the big and the small skies, these two persons are just second halves. Somehow he says they use this verse to conclude that it's all
is
one.
one.
Yeah.
How do I use everything to conclude that?
Okay, so we'll continue. There is no cause for the politics of divide and rule in the Vaikuntha planets. There is no fear, because of the united interest of the Lord and the residents. Maya means disharmony between the living entities and the Supreme Lord, and Vaikuntha means harmony between them. Actually, all living entities are provided for and maintained by the Lord, because He is a supreme living entity. But foolish creatures, although actually under the control of the supreme living entity, defy His existence, and that state is called Maya. Sometimes they deny that there is such a being as God. They say everything is void. And sometimes they deny Him in a different way. There may be a God, but He has no form. Both these conceptions arise from the rebellious condition of the living entity. As long as this rebellious condition prevails, the material world will continue in disharmony. So as long as this rebellious condition prevails, the material world will continue in disharmony.
Okay. Final paragraph of this verse. Harmony or disharmony is realized because of the law and order of a particular place. Religion is the law and order of the Supreme Lord. In the Srimad Bhagavad Gita, we find that religion means devotional service or Krishna consciousness. Krishna says, give up all other religious principles and simply become a soul surrendered unto me. This is religion. When one is fully conscious that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and supreme Lord, and one acts accordingly, that is real religion. Anything which goes against this principle is not religion. Krishna therefore says, just give up all other religious principles. In the spiritual world, this religious principle of Krishna consciousness is maintained in harmony, and therefore that world is called Vaikuntha. If the same principles can be adopted here wholly or partially, then it is also Vaikuntha. So it is with any society, such as the International Society for Krishna Consciousness. If the members of the International Society for Krishna Consciousness, putting faith in Krishna as a center, live in harmony according to the order and principles of Bhagavad Gita, then they are living in Vaikuntha, not in this material world.
Very interesting. Yes, that last line, very powerful. If the members of ISKCON, putting faith in Krishna as the center, live in harmony according to the order and principles of Bhagavad Gita, then they are living in Vaikuntha, not in this material world. But that's quite a big ask. For everyone to live in harmony and put faith in Krishna at the center. But one can hope. Prabhupada gives his Ashirvad, his blessing that it can happen properly. Yeah? Anything else from your side?
No, that's true.
Okay. Text 34. Therefore, let us consider how these two contaminated persons should be punished.
Oh dear.
The punishment should be apt, for thus benefit can eventually be bestowed upon them, since they find duality in the existence of Vaikuntha life. They are contaminated and should be removed from this place to the material world, where the living entities have three kinds of enemies. Purport. The reason why pure souls come into the existential circumstances of the material world, which is considered to be the criminal department of the Supreme Lord, is stated in Bhagavad Gita, 7th chapter, 727. It is stated that as long as a living entity is pure, what was that? A leaf, demigod just showering flowers. It is stated that as long as a living entity is pure, he is in complete harmony with the desires of the Supreme Lord. But as soon as he becomes impure, he is in disharmony with the desires of the Lord. By contamination, he is forced to transfer to this material world where the living entities have three enemies, namely desire, anger, and lust. These three enemies of force are... These three enemies of force, these three enemies force the living entities to continue material existence. And when one is free from them, he is eligible to enter the kingdom of God. One should not therefore be angry in the absence of an opportunity for sense gratification, and one should not be lusty to acquire more than necessary. In this verse, it is clearly stated that the two doormen should be sent into the material world where criminals are allowed to reside. Since the basic principles of criminality are sense gratification, anger, and unnecessary lust, persons conducted by these three enemies of the living entity are never promoted to Vaikuntha Loka. People should learn Bhagavad Gita and accept the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, as the Lord of everything. They should practice satisfying the senses of the Supreme Lord instead of trying to satisfy their own senses. Training in Krishna consciousness will help one be promoted to Vaikuntha. Thoughts?
Yeah, I just think it's a bit heavy.
Why?
I'm still sorry. You know, you can't turn up in Vaikuntha where everyone looks exactly the same. And okay, there's one thing to turn up and look like an adult, but different, but with clothes on. But you turn up looking like a 5-year-old kid, and there's 4 of you, and you ain't got any clothes on. So, quite frankly, they got a right to say, "Hold on a minute, kiddies. Where do you think you're going? Where's your mummy and daddy? How the hell did you get here?" Because kids actually always wander about, and it does come up later how they're in that mood, if it hasn't already, you know, that mood of, like, if you leave a kid and it will just, like, wander about. So in that mood, they wandered about and got to the 7th gate. So it's quite within, no, it will come up, you'll see. That mood, that sort of like childlike curiosity and innocence where they just walk about, you know. So anyway, all this word of punishing them, quite frankly, if I'm Lord Vishnu, which I'm not, but if I was, I would expect my doorkeepers to do their job, and if there's 4 naked boys turn up, I'd be like, yeah, you better hold them back. Especially because in the kingdom of God, whether it's, well, wherever Krishna is, quite frankly, there's always demons in one form or the other, so I don't know who those boys are. I don't need them coming in and messing things up, so you've got to stop them and find out who the hell they are. Excuse me for that, got a bit carried away.
Yeah, you're fired up.
Yeah, oh, I'm on the side of Jaya Vijaya here. Can't have none of this.
Every time we read, you give the same purport.
Yeah, I'm releasing my own Bhagavatam. The alternative purports.
Yeah, as soon as it is stated that as long as the living entity is pure, he is in complete harmony with the desires of the Supreme Lord. But as soon as he becomes impure, he is in disharmony with the desires of the Lord. So, interesting. So it can kind of go like that, you know? Switch one to the other.
Okay.
Shall we read one more? Call it a day. It's shorty.
Okay, you can make it. It's verse 35. He's a bit tired. Yeah.
But you read that, didn't you?
I'll just read this quick so we stay
but you
awake.
read the last one, didn't you?
No.
You did.
No, you just did.
Oh, is that the one I read?
Falling asleep.
Oh, that's terrible. I had a rough night. I woke up in the middle of the night and decided to get up.
And you've got people walking really slow.
No, let's go ahead and
Right,
read.
text 35.
Text 35.
When the doormen of Vaikuntha Loka, who were certainly devotees of the Lord, found that they were going to be cursed by the Brahmanas, they at once became very much afraid and fell down at the feet of the Brahmanas in great anxiety. For a Brahmana's curse cannot be counteracted by any kind of weapon. It's quite funny, isn't it? When you're like, why would you think that? Let me counteract a curse with a weapon. Why not just be humble and say, I'm sorry? That's quite funny. Like they're trying to think, there's no weapon that can counteract this. You know, if they could, they'd blow them up, but they can't. So.
Yeah, but it's not like that. Most people, what do? If someone says something about them, to them, critiques them, criticizes them, corrects them, first thing that you do is defend. Nobody says,
Yeah, but you don't normally get a weapon if someone tells you off.
The tongue is the sharpest of weapons.
Alright, purport. Although by chance the doormen committed a mistake by checking the Brahmanas from entering the gate of Vaikuntha, they were at once aware of the gravity of the curse. There are many kinds of offences, but the greatest offence is to offend a devotee of the Lord. Because the doormen were also devotees of the Lord, they were able to understand their mistake and were terrified when the 4 Kumaras were ready to curse them. One could say they therefore showed much better grace than the 4 Kumaras because they got it, you know, and were like, oh my days. Whereas the 4 Kumaras don't seem to accept they may have played a part in the confusion at the door. That's all I'm going to say.
Are you sure?
Let us know what you think in the comments below.
We really want to know what you have to say.
Is it Team 4 Kumaras or Team Jai Vijay? Let us know.
4 Kumaras, Team Vijay, 4 Kumaras. Okay, thank you all very much. Gruntaraj Srimad Bhagavatam.
Jai.
Ki.
Jai.
Jai.